With my voice trembling, I told the story again. My daughter-in-law had slammed my plate onto the floor and screamed, "You hateful old witch, get out of my life!" right in front of all her friends. On Monday morning, I handed her a letter that nearly knocked her off her chair. I can still hear the crack of porcelain against the hardwood floor. I can still feel those 20 eyes drilling into me, some full of pity, some avoiding my gaze. The elegant dinner at my son's house froze, and I became the spectacle. My name is Helen Parker. I'm 65 years old, and I've spent my entire life trying to be a good mother, a considerate mother-in-law, and now a devoted grandmother. But that night, Lauren made it clear none of that mattered. "Mom, please," my son Andrew whispered, his eyes begging me not to make things worse. He turned to his wife, trying to caution her, but not once did he defend me. I stood there, food smeared across my clothes, my hands trembled. Lauren stared at me with contempt, her perfectly painted face twisted into a sneer. It wasn't the first time she had shown me how she felt, but it was the most public, the most cruel. "I think it's best if you go home, Helen," she said with false concern. "You're clearly upset, and we don't want you to have one of your episodes." I have never had an episode, but Lauren had spent years planting that story, telling Andrew and his friends that I was unstable, difficult, meddling. And my son, the boy I raised alone after his father died when he was just 10, he believed her. I picked up my purse and the old sweater I always carried. When I looked up, I saw my 2 grandchildren watching from the top of the stairs, Clara, 7 years old, and Matthew, 5, their eyes wide as their grandmother was thrown out of her home like garbage. What were they learning about respect, about family? The road back to my small house was blurred with tears and memories. I thought about when Andrew first brought Lauren home 5 years ago. Back then, she was charming. She laughed at my stories, praised my house. Then came the change, a canceled invitation, a sharp remark, then restrictions whenever I wanted to see the children. There was always an excuse. The kids were busy, they had activities. Lauren needed family time without me around. I came home to the little house where I've lived for 40 years, the house where I raised Andrew alone, working 2 jobs so he would never go without. Now he lives in a big house in the suburbs with a woman who despises me for no reason. I collapsed into my chair, still in my stained clothes, letting the tears come. My phone buzzed. A text from Andrew. "Mom, I'm sorry about tonight. Lauren is stressed from work. Give her some space." Space, that's all I'd given them. So much space that I had become a stranger to my own grandchildren. And yet it still wasn't enough. I dragged myself into the bathroom and looked into the mirror. I hardly recognized the woman staring back at me, shoulders slumped, eyes red, a face carved with sorrow. I asked myself when I had allowed this to happen, when did I begin to think I deserved this treatment? That night I slept fitfully, dreaming of shattering porcelain and distant screams. In my dreams I defended myself. I told Lauren exactly what I thought of her. I reminded Andrew of every sacrifice I'd ever made. But in real life, I had walked away with my head down, defeated. Mourning brought no relief. I called my best friend Carol, who had spent years warning me that Lauren was pushing me out of the family. "Helen, that's enough," Carol said firmly. "You've let that woman walk all over you for far too long. When are you going to stand up for yourself?" "What can I do, Carol? If I confront her, she'll just use it as another excuse to keep me from the kids." "So you're just going to keep taking her abuse? That's your plan?" I had no plan. I felt trapped face her and risk losing the little contact I still had, or keep enduring Lauren's cruelty. I didn't know that Monday would change everything. Monday, when I would hand Lauren a letter that nearly knocked her off her chair. A letter that would finally bring the truth into the light and return to me the dignity that had been chipped away year after year. But first, I needed to find my courage. And as I sat at the kitchen table that morning, drinking tea from a chipped mug, I had no idea that courage would come to me from the most unexpected place, and that the weapon I needed against Lauren had been with me all along. The weekend dragged by in self-pity and regret. By Sunday afternoon, I couldn't stand being alone with my thoughts anymore. I decided to tackle the attic, a chore I had avoided for years. At least the physical labor might distract me from the ache in my chest. The attic was stifling, filled with memories packed away in cardboard boxes. I started with Andrew's childhood things, baseball trophies, school projects, photo albums I had lovingly filled. Lauren had seen all of this. I knew it, because I had been there. At every game, every science fair, I worked overtime shifts to pay his college applications. Hours slipped away as I opened box after box. My back ached, dust clung to my lashes, but the discomfort was almost welcome, a pain I could focus on. Then I found a large manila envelope tucked behind an old dresser. At first I didn't recognize it. It was yellowed with age, sealed with brittle tape. Inside were documents I hadn't thought about in years. The deed to Andrew's house. My late husband James had bought the property as an investment shortly before his sudden heart attack. His plan had been to fix it up and rent it out, but he never got the chance. After his death, I couldn't bring myself to sell it. It was one of his final decisions. Instead, I kept paying the taxes and minimum upkeep, leaving it empty. For years, when Andrew and Lauren got married, they were saving to buy a home. I remember that moment clearly, sitting at this very table, sliding a key across to my son. "It's yours," I told him, explaining that his father had bought it years earlier. "Consider it an early inheritance, a wedding gift." Andrew was stunned, grateful. Lauren was thrilled. What I didn't mention, what seemed unimportant at the time, was that I had never legally transferred the deed into Andrew's name. I had given them the house to live in, but on paper, it was still mine. I stared at the documents, my heart pounding. According to those papers, the house Andrew and Lauren lived in was still mine, the same house Lauren had thrown me out of just days before. I sank onto a dusty trunk, my mind spinning. I knew it. Had they ever checked the property records? From the way Lauren reacted when she saw me, I doubted she knew she was living in a house that legally still belonged to me. As I kept sorting through the envelope, I found insurance policies, tax records, and the original purchase contract. All of it confirmed what I already suspected. The house was still mine. I carried the papers downstairs and spread them out on the kitchen table to study. There had to be some mistake. Surely I hadn't forgotten something so important. But no, there was no mistake. I had given Andrew the keys, told him the house was his, but in the haze of grief after James's death, I had never completed the legal transfer. I had simply handed over the keys and let them move in, trusting we would handle the paperwork later, but we never did. The phone rang suddenly, startling me. It was Lisa, a neighbor who lived near Andrew and Lauren. "Helen, I hope I'm not bothering you," she said hesitantly. "Not at all. What is it?" I hesitated. "I just wanted to check on you after what happened at dinner. You know how fast news travels." I closed my eyes, feeling the shame wash over me again. "I'm fine, Lisa. Thank you for asking. Is there something else?" She lowered her voice. "I don't like gossip, but I thought you should know. I've seen Lauren with someone, more than once." My hand clenched the phone. "What do you mean? A man?" "No, Andrew. They meet at the cafe on Maple Street. They seem very close. Yesterday I saw them in a car. They were kissing. The world spun around me. Lauren was cheating on my son. The same woman who had pushed me out of their lives, who had convinced Andrew that I was the problem. "Did you tell Andrew?" I whispered. "I thought you should know first. I wasn't sure if I should say anything." After Lisa hung up, I sat frozen at the kitchen table, surrounded by property papers. Another blow. Lauren was cheating on my son, living in my house, and had humiliated me in front of everyone. Suddenly it all made sense. Her growing hostility toward me, her determination to cut me out. What if this wasn't just the usual tension between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law? What if it was all part of a plan to isolate Andrew from any support? I needed to confirm what Lisa had told me before making a decision. But along with the documents in front of me, I now held something that could completely shift the balance of power between Lauren and me. For the first time since that disastrous dinner, I felt something other than despair. Not hope, not revenge, but a certainty rising inside me. That the universe had just handed me the tools to reclaim my dignity and protect my son. Monday was coming, and with it a decision I never thought I'd face. To confront Lauren with what I knew, to tell Andrew about his wife's betrayal, or simply to enforce my legal rights to the house they were living in. As the sun dipped behind the window, one thing became clear. Enough. I would no longer be the victim in Lauren's story. It was time to write my own ending. That night, sleep never came. I tossed and turned, my mind racing through possibilities and consequences. By dawn, exhaustion sank deep into my bones, but a strange clarity filled me. I called Carol. "I need your advice," I said. "Come over in an hour?" She replied. We sat at my kitchen table with the property documents spread out and a full pot of coffee between us. Carol listened in silence as I told her everything. The house. Lisa's revelation about Lauren's affair. My growing suspicion that she was deliberately isolating my son. When I finished, Carol reached across the table and squeezed my fingers. "I've waited 5 years for you to finally see who that woman really is." "I should have listened to you sooner," I admitted. "The question is, what are you going to do now?" Carol tapped the deed with her finger. "You have options, Helen. Real power." Did I really? The thought felt so foreign after years of yielding to Lauren's hostility, stepping back to keep the peace, shrinking myself to meet her demands. "Should I tell Andrew about the affair?" I whispered. Carol frowned. "What if he doesn't believe you? Lauren has had years to poison him against you. He might think you're just making it up out of jealousy." She was right. Lauren had carefully painted me as the jealous, clingy mother who couldn't let go. Any accusation from me would be filtered through that lens. "Or," Carol continued, "you could use the house. Legally. You could evict them." The thought alone made me shiver. I could never do that to Andrew, never to my grandchildren. Of course not. But Lauren didn't know that. I looked at my lifelong friend and saw the sharp mind that had once made her a formidable businesswoman before she retired. "You think I should threaten her?" I asked. "I think you should let her know that you know. About the affair, about the house. Let her see that the balance of power has shifted." Carol's eyes sparkled. Let her squirm for once. The idea was tempting, so tempting it scared me. I was actually considering a calculated strike back, but wasn't that exactly what Lauren had done to me for years? "I'm not looking for revenge," I said at last. "I just want to protect my son and my grandchildren, and maybe reclaim a little of what she's taken from me." Carol nodded. "Then you'll need proof of the affair, something Andrew can't ignore." And then what? Break his heart? destroy his family? Lauren is already doing that, Carol said bluntly. You'd only be opening his eyes to the truth. After Carol left, I sat alone weighing my choices. The thought of confronting Lauren made me sick to my stomach. She was younger, confident, quick with cutting words, but she had never seen me fight back. That afternoon, I drove past the cafe on Maple Street where Lisa had spotted Lauren with her lover. Luck was on my side. They were sitting at a patio table, holding hands. I parked a short distance away and used my phone to take pictures. Lauren looked relaxed, happy, with a lightness on her face I had never once seen when she was with Andrew. The man was handsome, polished, with a neat haircut and designer clothes. They looked comfortable, at ease with one another. Clearly, this wasn't new. I followed them at a distance when they left the cafe, walking to a sleek car parked on a side street. Before getting in, Lauren glanced around nervously, then leaned in for a passionate kiss. I captured every moment with my phone, my stomach churning but my resolve firm. They drove to a small hotel on the edge of town. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. By nightfall, I knew exactly what I had to do. Not for satisfaction or revenge, but because my son deserved to know the truth, and because I had the right to reclaim my dignity. I sat down at my desk and began to write. The words flowed more easily than I had imagined. Lauren, I want you to know 3 things. First, the house you live in, the one you threw me out of, is still legally mine. I never transferred the deed into Andrew's name. I've included copies of the documents. Second, I know you're having an affair. I know the man you meet at the cafe on Maple Street. I also have photographic evidence of your visits to the Riverside Inn, attached here. Third, I love my son and my grandchildren more than anything in this world. I've stepped aside, kept quiet, endured your cruelty out of fear of losing them completely. That ends now. I don't want to hurt Andrew. I don't want to shatter the children, but I will not let you keep destroying this family while living under my roof. You have a choice. End this relationship immediately and start treating me with the basic respect every human being deserves, or I will tell Andrew everything and begin legal proceedings to evict you. I'm not asking us to be friends. I'm demanding the minimum decency for me and for my son, who deserves better than betrayal. You have until Friday to decide. Helen. I read the letter again, feeling a strange calm. No anger, no explosive emotion, just firm, undeniable truth. I tucked copies of the property papers and a few printed photos into the envelope. Tomorrow was Monday. Tomorrow I would hand this letter to Lauren and watch her fall off her chair. Tomorrow, everything would change. After so many years, I slept deeply. No weight of fear, no sting of rejection. Whatever happened, I would face it with my head held high. Monday morning dawned clear, in stark contrast to the storm inside me. I dressed carefully, a simple blue dress Carol always said brought out my eyes. Flat shoes, comfortable but neat, a touch of makeup, not for Lauren but for myself. That day I needed every ounce of confidence I could gather. The envelope waited on the kitchen counter, sealed, heavy with truth. Inside were the proofs that could shatter the perfect image Lauren had built, evidence of her betrayal, documents proving that the fortress she used against me was, in fact, mine. I checked the time. Andrew would already be at work. He always left before 7:30. The children would be at school. Mondays, Lauren usually spent her mornings at home catching up on chores before heading to lunch with her friends. The timing was perfect. As I drove toward the house, my resolve wavered. Was I truly ready to shake their world? What if it only made things worse? What if Andrew blamed me for being the messenger instead of blaming her for the betrayal? I didn't speak, just gripped the steering wheel tighter. I couldn't live like this any longer. The house, my house, legally appeared before me. The lawn perfectly trimmed. The garden blooming with flowers Lauren chose each season. From the outside, it looked like the ideal home, the perfect family. But I knew the truth now. I parked at the curb, took a deep breath, and walked up the stone path to the door. The envelope weighed heavy with consequences. I rang the bell, my heart pounding. Seconds later, footsteps approached. The door flew open, and there stood Lauren, immaculate as ever in designer jeans and a crisp white blouse. Her face shifted instantly from neutral to icy annoyance. "Helen," she said flatly, "Andrew isn't home." "I know," I answered, my voice steadier than I expected. "I came to speak with you." She arched a brow, not moving to let me in. "I thought I made it clear Friday that we needed space." "Friday, you made many things clear," I replied. "May I come in? This won't take long." Lauren hesitated, then flicked her hand dismissively, stepping aside with reluctance. "5 minutes. I have a busy day." I followed her into the living room, the same room where I'd been humiliated just days before. There was no trace of what had happened. No broken plate, no stains on the floor. But the air was still heavy, thick. "Well?" she said, arms crossed, her foot tapping impatiently. "What's so important?" I handed her the envelope. "This is for you." She eyed it suspiciously. "What is it?" "Something you need to see." With visible irritation, Lauren snatched the envelope and opened it. Her eyes skimmed the first page of my letter. They widened slightly. Then she flipped to the property documents, her fingers tightening on the paper. When she reached the photos, her face drained of color. She looked at me, then back at the pictures, then at the deed. Her legs buckled, and she collapsed into the nearest chair, the pages trembling in her hands. This is ridiculous," she stammered, but the fear in her eyes told another story. "These pictures prove nothing, and those documents must be outdated." "The pictures show exactly what they show," I said calmly. "And the documents are current. I verified everything at the county office yesterday." Lauren's composure cracked. "You had no right to spy on me, and you had no right to treat me the way you have for years," I shot back. "To push my son away from me, to limit my time with my grandchildren, to throw me out of my own home." "This house belongs to Andrew and me," she shouted. "Andrew and you have lived here because I allowed it," I interrupted. "I gave him the keys as a wedding gift, but I never completed the legal transfer. My oversight. But in the end, it's a blessing." Lauren shot to her feet, her face flushed with rage. "This is blackmail, isn't it?" "This is a boundary," I said evenly. "This is me standing up for myself after years of enduring your cruelty." "You wouldn't dare tell Andrew," she hissed. "You'd destroy him. Is that what you want? To hurt your precious son?" I met her gaze steadily. "I don't want to hurt anyone. That's why I'm giving you a choice. End the affair. Treat me with the basic respect I deserve, or face the consequences of your actions." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you can show up here with your so-called evidence and threats and control me? This isn't about winning, Lauren. This is about the truth. About my family. My family, which includes my son, my grandchildren, and my place in it." Lauren hurled the papers onto the coffee table, her hands trembling with fury. "Get out of my house." "My house," I corrected quietly, turning toward the door. "You have until Friday to decide what happens next." As I stepped outside, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. Despite the tension, I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't lost control. I had simply spoken my truth and laid down my terms. From my car, I looked back at the house. Lauren stood at the window, her expression unreadable from that distance. I had no idea what she would do next. Maybe she would end the affair. Maybe she would accept my conditions. Or maybe she would try to paint me as a liar. But for the first time in 5 years, the decision wasn't only hers. I started the engine, pulled away from the curb, and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever happened, I had reclaimed something essential: my voice. I thought I would have until Friday before hearing anything from Lauren or Andrew. I was wrong. By Tuesday afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. First Lauren, then Andrew, then Lauren again. I let them all go to voicemail. I needed time to steady myself before the inevitable confrontation. Lauren's message was dripping with venom. "You've made a terrible mistake, Helen. You have no idea what you've done." Andrew's was confused, full of worry. "Mom, what's going on?" "Lauren says you threatened her. Can you please call me back?" I drew a deep breath and dialed my son. "I think we need to talk in person." "Mom, whatever this is between you and Lauren, can't you just apologize?" She's really shaken. Something inside me cracked. "No, Andrew, not this." "Time. This is important. Can you meet me at Riverside Park in an hour?" He hesitated. "All right. But Mom, please, let's fix this without a fight." The park was quiet in the late afternoon. A few joggers, some people walking their dogs, all bathed in the last light of the day. I sat on a bench by the river, watching the water drift unhurriedly by. There was comfort in its constancy. The river had been here long before my troubles and would remain long after. Andrew arrived looking worn out, his tie loose, his hair tousled as though he had run his hands through it a dozen times. An old nervous habit from when he was a boy. "Mom," he said, sitting beside me, "what is all this?" "Lauren says you threatened to throw us out of the house." I turned to him, my heart aching at the pain in his eyes. "Andrew, there are things you need to know. Things I should have told you long ago." Calmly, carefully, I explained that the house had remained in my name all these years, not by intention, but by oversight. Andrew looked surprised, but not angry. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked. "Honestly, I forgot. After I gave you the keys, in my mind the house was already yours. I only realized when I was cleaning the attic this past weekend." Andrew nodded slowly. "Can we fix this? Tomorrow I'll call our lawyer and we'll handle the deed properly." I took a deep breath. "There's more, Andrew." His face tightened. "Mom, please. If this is just about how Lauren acted at dinner, she was under stress." "She's having an affair," I said softly. Andrew froze. The color drained from his face. "What?" I reached for his hand. "I'm so sorry. I wouldn't tell you if I weren't absolutely sure." "You're wrong," he said, pulling his hand back. "Lauren wouldn't do that. She loves me. She loves our family." "Andrew," I said gently, pulling out my phone. "Mom, you have proof?" he asked. I showed him the photos. A bite of Lauren with her lover at the cafe, the passionate kiss by the car, and the shot of them walking into the hotel together. Andrew's face collapsed little by little. No, that can't be," he whispered. "I'm sorry," I repeated, my heart splitting at the sight of his pain. "I didn't want to hurt you, but you need to know the truth." He jumped up, pacing in front of the bench. "How long have you known?" "Since Sunday. A neighbor saw them and told me." Andrew raked his hands through his hair, breathing hard. "And the threat about the house? Did you really mean that? Or were you just bluffing?" too. I would never let you or the children end up on the street, I said firmly. Never, but Lauren doesn't know that. I wanted her to understand that things have to change, that I won't let her belittle me and my own family anymore. He fell silent for a long time, staring at the river. All these years, Lauren told me you were always trying to separate us, that you were controlling, that you wouldn't let me have my own life. My throat tightened. And you believed her? She's my wife, he said softly, then corrected himself. She was my wife. I tried my best, Andrew. I stepped back. I compromised. I accepted the tiny scraps of time you allowed me with you and the kids, just to keep the peace. Andrew turned to me, his eyes rimmed red. I should have seen it. I should have protected you. We both made mistakes, I said gently, but it's not too late to put things right. What do I do? He asked, his eyes lost, the same way they'd looked the day his father died. The kids. Take time to think, I said slowly. Decide what's best for you, for Clara and Matthew, and whatever you decide, I'll be here. She's going to say you made it up, that you've been jealous all along. Andrew sighed. I know, I nodded. That's why I've prepared copies of everything. The photos, the deed. She can deny it all she wants, but the truth is the truth. Andrew sank onto the bench, his shoulders slumping. I have to confront her. Do you want to come with me? He thought for a moment, then shook his head. No, this is between me and Lauren. But afterward, I might need a place for me and the kids. You'll always have a place with me, I said. My heart ached for his suffering, but inside, a spark of hope flickered. My son was finally coming back to me. As twilight settled over the park, we sat in silence, watching the river drift by. The confrontation with Lauren still lay ahead, but something essential had already shifted. For the first time in years, my son and I were on the same side, facing truth instead of being divided by Lauren's lies. Whatever happened next, we would face it as a family, the real family that had existed long before Lauren ever walked into our lives. 6 months can change everything. On a warm Saturday morning, I was in the kitchen making breakfast. Dinosaur pancakes, our weekend tradition, newly restored. From upstairs came the pounding of little feet and Clara and Matthew's delighted voices. Grammy, is breakfast ready yet? Clara called from the stairs, her voice echoing through the house. My house, now filled with laughter and love after decades of silence. Almost, sweetheart. Go get your dad, too. So much had changed since the day I handed Lauren that letter. The showdown between Andrew and Lauren had been explosive, according to my son. At first, Lauren denied everything, then blamed everyone else. She said Andrew had been distant, that I had poisoned him against her, that society never understood her. But when faced with proof of her affair, the charade collapsed. The woman who once seemed untouchable, confident in her cruelty, turned out to be nothing more than a fragile shell built on fear and lies. The next day, Andrew and the kids moved back in with me, carrying only a few suitcases. Lauren raged. She threatened lawsuits, custody battles, even violence. But when Andrew's lawyer, not mine, because he wanted this to be his battle, presented the deed and the evidence of her affair, Lauren's position crumbled. The divorce was painful, especially for the children. 7-year-old Clara was old enough to understand that her mother had done something that hurt her father. 5-year-old Matthew couldn't grasp why his family had fallen apart overnight. I did everything I could to give them stability during those turbulent months. My small house became a refuge not only for Andrew and the kids, but for me too. After years of being pushed aside, I had a place again. I mattered again. Andrew walked into the kitchen, a child clinging to each hand. "Good morning, Mom. Smells amazing. Dinosaur pancakes," Matthew shouted, his eyes shining. I smiled, flipping a triceratops-shaped pancake onto a plate. "Who wants the first one?" "Me! Me!" they both yelled, scrambling into their chairs, laughter filling the air as I served breakfast. I marveled at how natural it felt my family gathered around the table, starting a new day, building new routines and memories. Not the future I once imagined, not without scars, but real and worth every second. Andrew looked at me over the children's heads, smiling a smile that reached his eyes, a true smile, so different from the forced ones I'd seen when he was with Lauren. "Thank you for everything, Mom. I don't know how I would have made it through without you." "That's what family is for," I said softly. "We show up for each other when it matters." After breakfast, while Andrew helped the kids get dressed, I checked my email. Among the usual messages, one made my heart skip. Confirmation that the transfer of the house was complete. I had officially signed it over to Andrew. It was my decision. After months of thought, that house carried too much. Pain for all of us. Lauren had tainted it with betrayal. More than that, I knew Andrew needed a true fresh start, a home of his own, free from Lauren's shadow or my past. The sale had gone through the day before. Andrew didn't know yet. Today I would tell him. I would show him the papers proving he was the sole legal owner. It was time for him to build a life on his own terms, in a place that truly belonged to him. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. Andrew stepped into the hall, frowning. "Mom, are we expecting anyone?" I shook my head. "I'll get it." When I opened the door, I saw Lauren on the porch. She looked nothing like the polished, confident woman who once hurled my dinner plate onto the floor. Her hair was pulled back in a plain ponytail, her face bare of makeup, her designer clothes replaced by old jeans and a worn sweater. "Helen," she said, her voice stripped of its usual sharpness. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, every instinct telling me to protect my family. "Lauren, I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, just a minute," she interrupted. "I need to say this." Behind me, I heard Andrew's sharp intake of breath as he recognized his ex-wife's voice. "Mom, it's okay. Let her in." Lauren stepped into the hall, her eyes lost, darting between me and Andrew. "I won't stay long," she said, taking a deep breath. I came to apologize. Of all the things I had imagined Lauren might say, an apology was not one of them. "These months have given me a lot of time to think," she went on. "The divorce, losing custody of the kids." Her voice broke. "I've been seeing a therapist trying to understand why I did what I did." Andrew crossed his arms, waiting. "I was wrong," Lauren said plainly. "I was insecure. I was jealous of the bond between you and your mother. I convinced myself she wanted to control us, but the truth is, I was the one trying to control everything." She turned to me. "Helen, I treated you terribly. The words I said, the way I kept you from Andrew and the kids. There's no excuse. I'm truly sorry." I searched her face for deceit but found only genuine regret. Not the Lauren I had known, or maybe, finally, the real one. "Thank you for saying that," I answered cautiously. "It means a lot to hear it." Andrew spoke softly. "The kids are upstairs, getting ready for the park. Do you want to see them before you go?" Lauren's eyes welled with tears. "Yes, I'd love to." As she went upstairs to hug Clara and Matthew, Andrew turned to me. "Mom, do you think she's sincere?" I thought for a moment. "Yes, I believe she is." People can change, Andrew. Sometimes it takes a shock to wake them up. Later, after Lauren had left and the kids were asleep from a long day at the park, I showed Andrew the deed. "Mom, I can't accept it," he stammered. "You can and you will," I said firmly. "It's time for you and the kids to have a home of your own, a real new beginning." Andrew pulled me into a tight hug, his voice trembling. "I don't deserve you. You deserve every good thing, Andrew. You always have." That afternoon, I sat on the porch watching the sunset, remembering all that had happened in the past 6 months, the pain of that dinner, the shock of discovering the truth about Lauren, the courage it took to write that letter. All of it had led me to this moment of peace. I had never wanted revenge. All I ever wanted were the things every person deserves: respect, love, and a rightful place in my own family. By standing up for myself, I had not only reclaimed my dignity but also helped my son see the truth he had ignored for too long. The future was still uncertain. Andrew and the kids would eventually move into their own home. Lauren would always be part of their lives because of the children. Healing would take time for all of us. But as the sky turned golden, gratitude filled me. The plate Lauren had shattered that night was beyond repair, but my family, the true family, was not. That evening settled over my porch with a silence unlike any other. Not emptiness, but a fullness, warm and whispering, "You've made it through." I sat until the sun slipped completely away, listening to the children's laughter inside, the soft hum of the coffee maker winding down, and my heart beating lighter than it had in years. The days that followed passed with a strange, gentle peace. Lauren didn't come knocking again. Andrew focused on the kids and his work. And me, I began to find myself again. Not through anything grand, but in the smallest things. Watering plants with music on the radio, baking bread without waiting for guests, throwing open the windows at dawn to let the light pour in. One afternoon, while cleaning out an old cabinet, I found a dusty wooden box. Inside were unfinished paintings of mine from 20 or 30 years ago. A few small oils, some charcoal sketches, watercolors. I lifted them carefully, feeling something return to me that I hadn't known I'd lost. Curiosity, longing. That night I couldn't sleep. I turned on the soft kitchen light and searched online. I found an art class at the community center for older adults. Without overthinking, I signed up. On the first day, my hands shook, afraid of being out of place. But the room was warm, filled with a dozen others like me, faces lined with age but eyes shining. They welcomed me as if I'd always been there. "Mrs. Parker, what would you like to paint?" the instructor, Lucia, asked with a smile. I surprised myself with my answer. "I want to paint the life ahead of me." From then on, every Thursday became sacred. Painting healed me. I poured into colors what I could never put into words. Landscapes from my childhood, blurred faces resembling Andrew as a boy, or Matthew when he laughed or slept. Each brush stroke was a piece of me. Returning. Slowly, I shared my story with a few classmates and realized I wasn't alone in rebuilding a life after storms. Marta had lost her daughter in an accident. Julian, a literature teacher, lived alone after a divorce. Rosa, once a nurse, lived on a modest pension, her children far away. Together, we had formed a small circle of resilience. We began meeting outside of class: Tuesday coffee, Saturday walks, impromptu dinners at my house or Marta's. One day, Julian suggested, "Why not hold a little exhibition? Show people what we've created. Prove that after 60, we can still begin again." We were as excited as children. The exhibition was held at the city library, called Starting Over. We hung our paintings with care, each accompanied by our stories. The opening night was more successful than we had dared to hope. Neighbors, family, Even a reporter from the local paper came to write about us. That night, when Andrew hugged me in front of my favorite canvas, a sunrise over a meadow, he said, "Mom, I'm proud of you." I smiled from the deepest part of me. "I'm proud too, son. It was always inside me. I just forgot." I don't know if art saved me or simply reminded me that I could always save myself. But now, I have a little corner with brushes, canvases, and soft light, a place where I can keep creating the life I've finally chosen for myself. Every time I sat in front of a blank canvas, I no longer felt lonely. I felt alive, and the best part was knowing that everything was only just beginning. After the exhibition, something inside me shifted. It wasn't only the joy of sharing, but the deep sense of belonging. For the first time in years, I wasn't just a mother-in-law or a silenced grandmother. I was simply Helen, a woman who could still begin again. The following week, Lucia, the art teacher, came to me with a proposal. "Helen, would you like to help me teach a new class for teenagers in tough situations?" Organized by the Helping Hands Foundation. They need someone with life experience, someone with empathy. I answered without hesitation. Of course, I'd be glad to. The class took place in a renovated house in the suburbs where kids between 13 and 18 gathered. Some had been in trouble with the law, others had grown up in broken homes, and a few were already parents far too young. The first time I stepped inside, my chest tightened. I wasn't sure I was ready. But when we sat together before the wall to begin our first mural, everything began to flow. I told them about myself, how people sometimes lose themselves in the weight of others' expectations until a moment comes when you must decide, keep crawling, or stand up and walk again. I spoke honestly, without masks, and it worked. They listened, and then they began to share. Stories far too heavy for their young years. Together, we painted a mural we called What We Carry Inside. Each of them added a piece. A girl named Maria painted a heart, bleeding but still beating. A boy named Evan painted a dog gazing at him lovingly from the sky. And me, I painted an older woman with paper wings, fragile but spread wide. The mural turned out raw but beautiful, honest. When we finished, Maria hugged me and whispered, "Thank you, Helen. You don't judge." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, overwhelmed, remembering how many times I had been judged, how many times I had stayed silent because I wasn't welcome. And now, I had found my voice in the most unexpected place. Maybe I was there with those kids because I understood what it felt like to be out of place even within your own family. I began returning every week. Sometimes just to listen, sometimes to paint, sometimes just to make toast with butter and jam, the way I used to for Andrew when he was little. I realized that giving them my time was like watering a garden that had been abandoned for too long. But what I never expected happened. One Thursday afternoon, after we had finished sketching the next mural, Lucia pulled me aside into the hallway. "Helen, I need to tell you something. Lauren just signed up as a volunteer in the adult literacy program. She'll be coming on Fridays." It felt as if the world closed in on me. "Lauren here?" Lucia nodded. "She said she wants to do something meaningful, that she needs to make amends, though she doesn't expect forgiveness." I froze, unsure whether to scream, cry, or laugh. Lauren, the same woman who had called me an old witch, who had thrown me out of my own home, would now be in the same space where I had rebuilt my life. That night I walked for hours, thinking, remembering, doubting. But in the end, I knew I couldn't run away. That place was mine too. So on Friday morning, I walked through the door, my heart tight but my chin held high, and there was Lauren. dressed simply, no makeup, holding a notebook. When she saw me, she lowered her eyes. No words were spoken. But something in me, something I still don't fully understand, decided to stay. I decided I would not let her presence take away everything I had fought to build, because this time the power was no longer in her hands. That afternoon, when I got home, I set the table for two and laid out the old china, the set that had survived that disastrous dinner. Andrew noticed and asked, "Are you expecting someone?" "Maybe," I said, "or maybe I'm just preparing for what comes next." And for the first time, those words didn't weigh me down, because now, what comes next no longer frightened me. Looking back at everything I had lived through, I realized family was never about appearances, but about how we weather storms together. Love isn't always sweet, it is often tested, but it is in those tests that we discover the true value of connection. I had learned that keeping a family together doesn't mean disappearing piece by piece. Sometimes it means daring to stand up, to draw boundaries, and from there finding respect and genuine love. Maybe each person listening to my story sees a piece of their own life in it. So I want to ask you, if it were you, would you stay silent to keep a false peace, or would you choose to speak the truth to preserve your dignity and real love? Share your thoughts below, because your answer might be the encouragement someone else needs while standing at the same crossroads. And if you want to keep walking with me, hearing more stories and finding lessons together, stay with me for the next chapters. We are not just listening to stories here. We are learning how to heal, how to build a family rooted in love and honesty.